Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is May the 8th, 2024. It has been 3,754 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 78 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and 2 years and 75 days since Russia expanded its war of aggression. Today's podcast looks at events that happened on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. During the podcast, you will find the Russia-Ukraine war map helpful to visualize the areas discussed. A link is in the podcast description. There are map updates today. The Russia-Ukraine War Report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission, the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. 1. Our assessment that there was an elevated risk of large-scale drone and missile attack against Ukrainian civilians and civilian infrastructure from May the 7th to May the 10th due to the inauguration of Russian autocrat Vladimir Putin and the May the 9th Victory Day celebrations in Russia was regrettably accurate. We maintain there is an elevated risk of another attack through May the 10th. 2. Ukrainian personnel shortages are extending deployment times, limiting troop rotations and forcing competent effective units to maintain defensive positions, which is contributing to Russia's ongoing tactical advances. 3. Russian forces continue to exploit the delays in significant military aid from the US, the Czech Republic-led Ammunition Initiative, the European Union and the United Kingdom, carrying out 84 attacks on Tuesday. 4. While we assess that critical ammunition has started to reach frontline Ukrainian units, it will take another 1 to 3 weeks for significant military aid to arrive. The tactical situation should stabilize by the end of May. 5. Renewed Russian chatter of a looming large-scale attack to capture the city of Kharkiv is a psychological operation. 6. Our assessment that Russia is setting conditions for a larger attack in the direction of Malinivka was accurate, and we maintain that Russia is setting conditions for a larger offensive in the direction of Vuhledar. 7. Recent direct threats toward the United Kingdom and autocrat of Russia Vladimir Putin ordering the first tactical nuclear drills since the end of the Cold War, and Belarus carrying out nuclear drills, highlights how the world is caught in the mutually assured destruction and stability paradox. 8. Russia's trampling of international humanitarian law has been accelerating since March the 22nd. We maintain that the willful ignoring of blatant Russian war crimes by international watchdogs will continue to encourage escalation. 9. Multiple European government intelligence agencies have also assessed that the disjointed response to Russian threats directed at Ukraine's allies is encouraging Moscow to expand its global hybrid warfare campaigns. We maintain that continued inaction and the excessively risk-averse rules of engagement support an environment ripe for a serious international incident. 10. The attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have incrementally increased the chance of an intentional nuclear accident at multiple nuclear facilities in Ukraine, and the situation is more serious, especially at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, than what the International Atomic Energy Agency is reporting. Overnight, Russia launched its largest missile and drone attack in almost a month. 295 MS strategic bombers from Alenia military airfield, a Kilo-class submarine in the Black Sea, and MiG-31K, Su-34 and Su-35 tactical aircraft launched 45 Kh-101 cruise missiles, 4 Kalibr cruise missiles, 1 Kh-47M2 Kinzhal air-to-surface ballistic missile, and 2 Kh-59 or 69 guided air-to-surface missiles. Russian forces also launched 2 Iskander-M short-range ballistic missiles, an Iskander-K cruise missile, and 21 Shahed-136 one-way drones. Ukrainian air defenses intercepted 20 UAVs, 33 Kh-101s, 4 calibers, and both guided missiles. During the morning of May 7th, Russia also launched 2 Kh-59 or 69 missiles toward Odessa, with both intercepted. Ukrainian air defenses had a 78% success rate, which is a significant improvement from early April and indicates that critical military aid has started to arrive. Wednesday morning's attack lasted for 4 hours and came in 3 waves, with Shahed-136 one-way drones likely testing air defenses, followed by a saturation attack and then ballistic and near-ballistic missiles to attack the primary targets, which were exclusively civilian infrastructure. Tonight's attack was the 5th in 7 weeks to strike Ukraine's energy infrastructure. On the morning of May 8th, the President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said, "Massive missile attack by Nazi Putin on the Day of Remembrance and Victory over Nazism in World War II. More than 50 rockets and more than 20 Shaheds on infrastructure in the Lviv, Vinnytsia, Kyiv, Poltava, Kirovograd, Zaporizhzhia and Ivano-Frankivsk regions. All the necessary services are already working on the ground, eliminating the consequences of terror. The whole world should clearly understand who is who. The whole world has no right to give Nazism another chance." The Day of Remembrance and Victory over Nazism is also known as VE or Victory Europe Day, marking the 1945 Nazi surrender and the end of the World War II in Europe. This day civilized world chants the motto "Never Again." Regrettably, now it turned into a self-calming mantra, as we in Ukraine are experiencing unprovoked violence again and again. Civilized world thinks that never again is still true, because civilized world does not start wars. And yet, we should be honest to ourselves. If you're aware of evil and don't stand up to it, you become complicit. The world needs to wake up from its slumber of never again, and once and for all break this vicious circle of however many times again. During the attack, Poland scrambled F-16 fighter planes, and the United States Air Forces sent a KC-135 Strata tanker to the Polish-Ukrainian border. At the time of recording, there were no reports of Russian missiles or drones violating NATO or Moldovan airspace. The Minister of Energy of Ukraine, Herman Galushchenko, said that, quote, "Generation and transmission facilities were attacked in the Poltava, Kirovograd, Zaporizhzhia, Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk and Vinnytsia regions, and that 3 detect thermal power plants were seriously damaged." Ivano-Frankivsk administrative and military governor Svetlana Onyshchuk reported, quote, "The target was an object of energy infrastructure. As a result, a fire broke out. The appropriate services worked at the scene and the fire was promptly extinguished. Fortunately, there were no casualties." In the Kirovograd Oblast, critical infrastructure was hit near Alexandria. 13 homes were damaged and an 8-year-old child was wounded. Falling debris damaged 14 homes in Brovary, Kyiv Oblast, causing several fires. Mayor Igor Saposhko said that 2 people were in hospital with serious shrapnel injuries to their arms and legs. Elsewhere in the Kyiv region, all missiles and drones that targeted Ukraine's capital were intercepted, with falling debris causing damage. In the Lviv Oblast, the detect thermal power plant in Dobrotvir was hit by 4 cruise missiles, causing 2 fires. Russian missiles, including a Kh-47M2 Kinzhal, struck the Naftogaz Bilchevo-Lytsko-Uherskoye natural gas storage facility and pipeline compressor station near Stryy for the 6th time since March. Lviv City Council Deputy Igor Zinkevich wrote on Telegram that the station was damaged. Speaking on Marathon, Maxim Kozitsky, the head of Lviv Oblast Military Administration, said that 8 of 12 missiles that targeted the region were intercepted, and there were no casualties. Governor of the Vinnytsia Oblast Serhiy Borzov said that, quote, "Critical infrastructure objects have been hit." NASA Information for Resource Management Systems showed that the electrical substation in Sherbani, Poltava Oblast, was on fire. After the attack, Governor Filip Pronin said, quote, "An energy infrastructure object was hit, and a fire broke out." Governor of the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, Ivan Fedorov, said that, quote, "The Russian army targeted critical and civilian infrastructure facilities. There is destruction." Unquote. In addition to the electrical grid, a garage cooperative, it is a type of parking garage, but instead of individual stalls, it is a group of individual garages. And a fire station was destroyed. The city trolley system was also damaged. There were significant power outages in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, but at the time of recording, the extent was unknown. The International Atomic Energy Agency did not release a statement about the status of external power to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Also, on May the 7th, the VKS, that's the Russian Aerospace Forces, and Russian military units bombed and shelled multiple settlements across Ukraine. In the Kharkiv Oblast, Borova was hit by 3 UMPB D-30 guided bombs, wounding 3, including a 16-year-old girl. The VKS also bombed Kolodyazne, wounding 1. A 55-year-old man was killed in an explosion in the village of Bliznyuki. In the Kherson region, Russian forces shelled Belozerka with Grad rockets fired by multiple launch rocket systems, and the VKS dropped 2 Fab-250 UMPK glide bombs. 26 homes were severely damaged, a woman was killed, and 3 people were wounded. Throughout the day, Russian forces shelled 13 villages and settlements and the city of Kherson, damaging and destroying 91 homes, a school and a bus. On the morning of May the 8th, Russian artillery targeted the Kyiv-Kherson train with 99 passengers on board. Infrastructure was damaged, halting the train, but no one was injured. The same attack damaged electrical infrastructure, knocking out power to parts of the city of Kherson. Russia repeatedly shelled and launched one-way drones targeting the Nikopol rayon of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast from fire bases and launch points adjacent to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. 14 drones target the region, with 9, quote, neutralized. 5 houses, a gas pipeline, and power lines were damaged. 6 people were wounded, including a 91-year-old woman and a 6-year-old girl. Also in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, a first-person view or FPV one-way drone struck a house in Zelenodolsk, wounding a 56-year-old man who is in hospital. In the Sumy Oblast, a Russian drone dropped IED, wounded a civilian and 2 children, 14 and 15. Unrelated to the overnight missile and drone strikes, on May the 7th, the VKS bombed an electrical substation in Belopilla, destroying part of the facility. Here is today's action report. On May the 7th, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, or GSAFU, reported Russia carried out 84 assaults across the line of conflict. In the last 10 days, there have been 1,143 separate attacks, with a 7-day moving average of 111. Russian forces are in operational pauses in the Kremenna, Kostantinivka and parts of the Vuhledar areas of operation, or AOs, with a sharp increase in the number of attacks expected within the next 2 to 5 days. The former spokesman of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and military analyst, retired Colonel Vladislav Seleznyov, said on Espresso TV that Russia has, quote, at least a 2-week window of opportunity to implement certain offensive measures in the east of our country. Because we still have not received the weapons promised by our Western partners, and this creates serious problems for our defenders. It is inadmissible and impossible to fight enemy tanks bare-handed. Unquote. Quick assessment. There are clear signs that the amount of ammunition available for Ukrainian tubed and barrel artillery units is increasing. Russia and Ukraine are both moving reserves into different areas, anticipating different needs. We do agree Russia is racing to capture as much territory before Ukrainian artillery units can increase their fire rate. Now let's talk about what happened on the battlefield. There were small changes in territorial control, and this is a good time to open up our war map. There is a link in the podcast description. Ready? Here we go. Starting in the Kharkiv Oblast, Russian forces continued their attacks in the Kupiansk AO. Mutual fighting was reported north and northwest of Sinkivka, with no change in the situation, and Russian forces continued their attacks near Pishchane. Russian commanders are moving up to 13,500 additional troops into the Kursk Oblast, mostly light infantry, increasing the total contingent in Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod regions to 50,000. There are no indications that assault groups are being formed, and the force is too small to launch a large-scale attack towards the city of Kharkiv. In the Svatovo AO of the Luhansk Oblast, Russian forces limited their attacks to the area near Stelmachivka, with no change in the situation. In the Kremenna AO, Russian forces entered an operational pause. There was only positional fighting northeast of Nevske. In the Siversk AO of Luhansk Oblast, Russian forces went into an operational pause east of Bilogorivka and continued their attacks on Verkhnyo-Kamyansk in Donetsk Oblast from Zolotarivka. In occupied Luhansk, Ukraine used M39 ATACMS missiles to attack a fuel storage depot and a major gas pipeline near the city of Luhansk, sparking a large fire. Electrical infrastructure was also damaged, knocking out power to parts of the city. Russian occupiers reported 5 people were wounded. At the time of recording, the oil depot was still burning. Moving to the Donbass, let's start in the northeastern part of the Donetsk Oblast. In the Siversk and Soledar AOs, Russian forces continued their attacks east and south of Spirne, southeast of Vyimka and south of Vesele and Rozdolivka, with no change in the situation. In the Kostantinivka AO, the spokesman for Operational Command East, Nazar Voloshin, confirmed our assessment that the temporary bridge to cross the Siversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal north of the Novy microdistrict was destroyed by a Russian attack. He explained that combat engineers are working to restore the crossing. Quote, "When our truck was there and brought construction materials, it was hit by FPV drones," adding that no one was killed in the strike. Russian mercenary Melblogovo Gonza said there was positional fighting near Bogdanivka, with no change to the line of conflict. The Ukrainian Kraken Special Unit has been fighting near Chasiv Yar for the last month and reported that Russian forces remain outside of the settlement. Ukrainian military analyst Alexander Kovalenko said that Russian forces were in an operational pause as additional units were being brought into the AO. This includes elements of the Russian 217th and 331st Guards Airborne regiments. Company-sized attack groups are being formed, with new attacks expected by May the 11th. Ukrainian artillery units in the AO reported they had received a significant increase in ammunition. Russian attempts to advance toward the Novy microdistrict and south of Ivanivske were repulsed. To the south, Russian forces continued their attacks north of Klishivka and southeast of Andriivka, with no change in the situation. In the southwestern part of the Donetsk Oblast, Russian forces continued to concentrate most of their offensive efforts in the Avdiivka AO. Russian troops attempted to advance toward Alexandropol from Arkhangelsk without success. Russian claims of a 1,500-meter advance in this direction are false. The Russian Ministry of Defense, or Armored, claimed that fighting continued in the area of Novokalinove and that Ukrainian forces were attacking near Ocheretine. Russian troops also sustained their attempts to enter Novoalexandrivka from the east and continued to be unsuccessful. Over the last 2 days, Russian troops consolidated their positions on the railroad grade that is parallel to the T-511 highway and launched new attacks in the direction of Progress and Yevhenivka, which were repulsed. Russian attempts to advance from Solovyovo towards Sokil have been contained, and we reduced the grey area on the war map. Wogonzo reported fighting continued in the, quote, area of Berdichi, suggesting that there continues to be significant no-man's land south of Solovyovo. Russian forces did advance in the direction of Novopokrovsk, but an attempt to expand the salient toward Novoselivka-Persha failed. South of Semenivka, Russian advances were stopped. Fighting continued on the outskirts of Umansk, in Netailove, and in the garden area south of Pervomaisk. In the Vuhledar-Yo, Russian forces continued to consolidate their gains in part of and near the refractory factory of Krasnohorivka. Ukrainian forces have not stabilized their defensive lines due to heavy bombing by the VKS, with one soldier saying, quote, "Either the enemy will be able to break through our defenses in Krasnohorivka, or the 155s will arrive and the occupier will quickly lose the remaining potential for attacks." Unquote. Fighting continued east of Georgievka and on the edge of Novomikhailivka. A very graphic video showed a failed Russian assault near the fishing pond, involving 8 motorcycles and an infantry fighting vehicle. Yes, motorcycles. The Ukrainian 79th Air Assault Brigade wiped out the Russian platoon and destroyed the IFV. We'll link to the video in our almost daily situation report, along with many other pictures and videos from the last 24 hours. Some might find this one disturbing, but if you want to see it, there is more information in the podcast description on how to become a subscriber. Based on the geolocated video and additional information, we reduced the grey area in Paraskoviivka and moved the line of conflict further east. Armored told a half-truth, and Ukrainian forces did conduct a counterattack in the Staromlinivka Yo. The 58th Motor Infantry Brigade recaptured the southern part of Urozhaina, took prisoners, and pushed Russian troops to the remains of the tree line on the northern edge of Zavidne Bazhanya. What was the Russian half-truth? Armored reported that the Ukrainian counteroffensive failed. Russian forces also conducted multiple attacks west of Staromayorsk, failed to advance, and suffered heavy losses. Insurgents in occupied Mariupol reported that Russian forces were transferring a significant number of troops and equipment in the direction of Berdyansk. Russia is increasingly using the land route they established over the summer of 2023 as a ground line of communication, that's a G-local supply line, between occupied Donetsk Oblast and occupied Crimea. In the Orekhiv of the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, mutual fighting restarted northwest of Verbove and continued in the no-man's land that was once Robotyne. In the Kherson, Russian forces launched 2 attacks on Ukrainian positions in Krynki, suffered losses, and retreated into the forest belt. Elements of the Russian 810th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade were repeatedly attacked by UAVs from the Ukrainian 37th Marines, inflicting heavy casualties. There's a link to the video in today's sitrep. On the Russian front, in the Krasnodar Krai, a Fab-500 bomb fell off a plane near Vorontsovka and exploded. There were no injuries reported. In the Belgorod region, a Lancet drone failed in flight and crashed into the yard of State Kindergarten 1 in Oktябрьский. The drone did not explode, and 47 children and 30 employees were evacuated. Russian officials in the Voronezh region reported a drone struck the fuel depot at the railroad station in Liski, but failed to penetrate the tank. The duck potato prince and self-declared president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, decided that if autocrat Vladimir Putin could order a snap tactical nuclear weapon drill, he could do one too. A squadron of nuclear-capable Su-25 ground attack aircraft with the 116th Attack Squadron, the 587th Separate Missile Division, and the 465th Missile Brigade participated. Lukashenko ordered, quote, the entire range of activities from planning, preparation, and use of strikes with tactical nuclear weapons to be checked out. On Voyen TV, a propaganda video claimed to show a nuclear-armed Belarusian Su-25 taking off, which would be a major provocation even as part of a drill. There was just one problem. The claimed bomb was actually a drop tank that is commonly used on warplanes to extend their range.
You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War Podcast. Our team of journalists, researchers, and analysts is funded by readers, listeners, and viewers just like you. To support independent journalism, please consider becoming a patron. You can find us on patreon.com/malcontentnews.
Here is my theater-wide update. The Verkhovna Rada extended martial law and mobilization for another 90 days, and the draft law will be sent to President Zelensky for his signature. The Cabinet of Ministers decided to delay accelerated mobilization another 30 days. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine said that combat units have thousands of open roles, including combat troops, drivers, mechanics, gunners, operators of all types of weapons, gunners service, UAV operators, and combat medics. The Cabinet of Ministers also supported President Zelensky's February the 8th decree to create a new branch of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, called the Unmanned Systems Forces. The Security Service of Ukraine, that's the SBU, uncovered a plot to assassinate President Zelensky, Defense Intelligence head Kyrylo Budanov, SBU head Vasyl Malyuk, and other, quote, high-ranking officials. Malyuk headed the investigation personally after learning of the plot. The Federal Security Service of Russia, or FSB, recruited 2 colonels and planned to carry out the assassinations before Orthodox Easter as an inauguration present for Russian autocrat Putin. Counterintelligence and SBU investigators followed the 2 colonels with the State Security Administration, or SSA, who leaked classified information to the Russian Federation. The plan was to observe the targeted Ukrainian leaders' movements and pass the information to the FSB. Once the location of the secured building used was identified, Russia would launch a missile attack. The plotters would then use FPV one-way drones with RPG-7 grenades and Mon-90 anti-personnel mines to eliminate any survivors. Once that was completed, Russia would launch a second missile attack, destroying any evidence of the second attack with the drones. Both accused traitors are in custody and being held for preparing for a terrorist act. Additional charges are expected to be filed, and a wider investigation into the plot continues. Since February 2022, the SBU has opened up 3,000 cases against Ukrainians for various acts in support of the Russian Federation. The United States Department of State said that Washington does not intend to change its defense posture or nuclear readiness after Putin and the Russian Foreign Ministry made threats. Speaking to reporters and addressing the recent intimidation, U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications John Kirby said the following.
And look, lastly, if Mr. Putin and Russian officials are worried about their troops in Ukraine getting hit with weapons from other countries, then the easiest thing to do is just take your troops and leave.
The General Director of the Defense Industry JSC, Herman Smetanin, said that Ukraine had started producing NATO-standard 60mm mortar shells. Ukrainian officials said that they could significantly increase domestic production of ammunition and weapons and have enough capacity to support a $10 billion boost in 2024. Denmark announced it would provide Ukraine with a $36 million humanitarian aid package. Italian Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Antonio Tajani said that the weapons provided to Ukraine by Italy can be used by the armed forces of Ukraine only within the borders of their country. This military aid is not intended for use on the territory of Russia. Latvia shipped over $100,000 in tactical radio communications to Ukraine. The Independent Republic of Kosovo, despite repeated threats by Serbia, announced it was sending a military aid package to Ukraine, which includes 60, 81 and 120mm mortars, military trucks, unspecified armored vehicles, and tactical vehicles for transportation and military operations. Belgium confirmed it was accelerating the delivery of its F-16s, which should be operational with the Ukrainian Air Force by the end of 2024. Finally, Romania is reportedly considering sending one of its 4 Patriot air defense batteries to Ukraine. There was a lot more news, including autocrat Putin's inauguration, which I'll share in Thursday's podcast. And that's what we know. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.